2018 meeting of the Palm Springs Planning Commission to order. Happy Valentine's Day, everyone, and to the general public. Can we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Donenfeld?
Present.
Commissioner Hirschbein is excused. Commissioner Hudson?
Present.
Commissioner Maruzzi?
Present.
Vice Chair Callardine?
Present.
Chair Wormick?
Present.
6 members, 5 members present. We have a quorum.
Can we have a report on the posting of the agenda, please?
Madam Chair, the agenda was posted on Thursday, February the 8th. This meeting has been noticed and posted in accordance with state law.
This is the point where we look at the acceptance of the agenda. Does anyone have comments on the agenda? Can I get a motion to accept?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Donenfeld, seconded by Commissioner Callardine. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Public comments. This time has been set aside for the members of the public to address the Planning Commission on a consent calendar and other agenda items. Please note that the Planning Commission is prohibited from taking action on items not listed on the posted agenda. 3 minutes is allowed for each speaker. Testimony for public hearings may be offered at this time or at the time of the hearing. We have only one item in addition to consent calendar, so if anyone from the public wishes to speak on item 2A, they can speak now or they can speak when the public hearing comes up. There being no members of the public that, are you? No members of the public that have offered to speak. I'm going to close the public hearing. On the consent calendar, there is one item on it, which is the approval of the minutes of December 13th, 2017.
I make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Is there a second? Do you want to hit your button?
I second.
Okay, it's been moved by Commissioner Callardine and seconded by Commissioner Maruzzi. Can we have a roll call, please? This has been approved 5-0 with 1 absence. The second item is a public hearing item, item 2A. It is the La Quinta Brewing Company for a conditional use permit to allow for a cocktail lounge tap room with an existing commercial building located at 301 North Palm Canyon Drive, Zone CBD, Section 15. Can we have a staff report, please?
Madam Chair and members of the Commission, before Mr. Malacker gives his staff report, I'd like to give you just a brief explanation of in-lieu parking fees, as this is relatively new to members of the Planning Commission, although the program itself is not. And so with that, let me just go ahead and give you some information on that. The in-lieu parking program was adopted by the City Council of the City of Palm Springs back in January of 1999. So the in-lieu program has been in place for just about 20 years now. However, I wouldn't call it an overwhelmingly successful program in that very few properties have actually utilized it. I believe some research done by one of my staff members shows that over the last 19 or so years, approximately 10 or 11 properties have benefited from the in-lieu parking spaces. Where we see this occur most often is when there is a change of use in an existing building. So for example, where we have a retail space that changes later to a restaurant space where the parking requirement is more intense, that's most often where we will see the in-lieu parking program be used. There is approximately $40,000 in the account. As I had mentioned, we've only used it for about 10 or 11 properties. The actual management of the account is through the Economic and Community Development Department. However, City Council is solely responsible for the use of those funds. And the funds are to be used only for the acquisition or construction of parking facilities within the Central Business District. And that's the only district where this is applicable. In terms of the fees for the parking spaces themselves, these are also set by the City Council. The most recent fee schedule adopted by City Council was back in 2015. The fee structure is as such. For new construction, the in lieu fee per parking space is approximately $14,000. And again, we haven't really seen any new construction utilize the in lieu program. For existing construction, where the building is already built, this is most often where we see it used for a change of use. The fee is $2,300 per space approximately. And again, those fees are established by the City Council. They are not discretionary fees, but established by resolution of the City Council. In terms of the program itself, it is adopted as part of the city's parking code. And so it's a ministerial action rather than a discretionary action. In the code it says, in the CBD zone, in lieu of furnishing the parking spaces required by the provisions of this section, the parking requirement or any portion thereof may be satisfied by the payment of such amount as may be prescribed by resolution of the City Council into the parking fund of the city prior to the issuance of a building permit. The one exception to that is for existing construction, we typically have the requirement that the in lieu fees must be paid prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy. One of the things that you'll note in Mr. Malacker's staff report and the associated conditions of approval is there is a condition relative to the payment of the in lieu fees. So again, this is a ministerial action, not a discretionary action. The one important role of the Planning Commission is to ascertain that the project, based on the use, will comply with parking requirements. It's not important whether or not they are in lieu spaces or spaces in the physical parking lot, but rather that through the use of the in lieu spaces, they will comply with the parking requirements as established by the code. So that concludes my explanation. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have on that.
I have a question. Lynn, did you say under the statute or the ordinance that you read that the applicant has a right to insist on using in lieu payments as opposed to coming up with parking spaces? There's no discretion on our part with respect to that decision?
No, and it's something that, again, is a ministerial function. Staff has used this for changes of use, and it's something that does not require action by either the Planning Commission or City Council to approve those spaces. So it is something that anyone within the CBD district can utilize as an adopted ordinance.
Without limitation?
Without limitation, other than payment of the fees as required.
Thank you.
To say that the planning director essentially said we don't have discretion in this matter. Not that I think we should have used it if we had, but it's pretty clear that if the applicant wants to use the in-use fee program to make up for the parking, whatever parking shortage there is, which is now a separate question, they have the right to do so. So I'm satisfied.
That actually wasn't a question of staff and is out of order. Thank you. I do have a question for, does anybody else? I have Commissioner Maruzzi.
Yes, staff to clarify that.
So, let's see if I'm understanding this. If an applicant was unwilling or unable to provide any parking spaces, required parking spaces, could they simply pay an in lieu fee for all of those spaces that were required in the CBD?
Potentially. Are you talking about a new construction situation?
No, a change of use.
Change of use. Potentially, yes.
Okay.
The question that I had is, we don't have discretion, but I did talk to the assistant city manager to find out what a new parking space costs. And it does cost $20,000 to $30,000 in a structure.
Is that in a structure?
It's in a structure.
In about
I didn't ask the cost of leasing a parking lot or buying land.
$5,000.
But there is a cost. So from what I understand, even though the cost doesn't in no way compares either to the purchase of land, the lease of land, or the cost of a new space in a structure, we actually don't have discretion in this matter.
Correct. Again, the fees are established by the city council.
But we could refer the issue in terms of the adequacy of the fees to council and comment on it.
Yeah, and
As
I'll talk a little bit about that later under our discussion items.
Right, okay, so that, at this point, is there, I'm assuming there is an additional staff report from Glenn?
Right, there's a brief staff report. So this application is La Quinta Brewing Company for a conditional use permit, which is a requirement of a cocktail lounge tap room without food service in the central business district. So the building that in question is at the Cornerstone Building, which is at 301 North Palm Canyon Drive. Currently, looking at the site plan, there are 4 units that front along North Palm Canyon Drive, and then the 2-story building, which contains Suite 100 and Suite 200, and then several smaller vendor spaces, which are along Andreas Road, and then there are some right off of the stairwells that go up to the second floor. So looking at the floor plan for the proposal is to have 26 seats indoors for La Quinta and then 16 seats outdoors on the patio underneath the second-story balcony. You'll see that there's some service spaces inside the proposed leased area, 2 bathrooms, storage, and cooler for the beer, and then several seats, bars inside. This is a picture currently of the situation that is there now. It formerly was used for gallery space over the years. When the Cornerstone Building was built in the late 1990s, all of the space within the building was calculated as retail, and they were provided 24 parking spaces, which is currently located in the parking garage behind the building. In 2001, a restaurant came in to occupy Suite 200 called Kickstands. There was a land use permit that was issued for that location, and they paid 2 in lieu parking spaces because they intensified the use.
Is that Suite 200?
Suite 200.
That's upstairs, right?
So looking at this photograph currently here, you'll see the second story is occupied by a restaurant called Cafe Europa. And the La Quinta will be down on the first floor with the outdoor seating underneath the balcony. So I'd like to spend just a few minutes talking about the parking calculation. This slide is in your staff report, and you'll see that how we calculate parking, we added up the square foot of all the retail units, which equals 4,700 square feet. The downtown parking combining zone allows 1 space per 400 square feet, which requires 12 spaces. Suite 200, which is Cafe Europa, has indoor and outdoor seating. The indoor seating is counted as 1 per 4 seats, and the outdoor is 1 per 8 seats. So a total of 9.75 and 6.6. And then when we add in La Quinta on Suite 100, 26 indoor is 6.5, and outdoor 16 seats is 2. So when you add these spaces up, it's a total, all the spaces required is a total of 37. The downtown parking combining zone also allows us to do an on-street credit. So for each space that fronts or is parked next to the subject site can be counted as a half space. So there are 8 spaces that line Palm Canyon and Andreas Road, which will equal 4 spaces as a credit. The in lieu parking that was paid in 2001 for the kickstand is 2, and that leaves 31 spaces required. With the 24 spaces in the parking lot behind the building, the site is short 7 spaces. In discussing the application with La Quinta Brewing Company, we talked about other options, parking variances, an off-site parking management plan, and then the in lieu parking fees. The applicant is agreed to pay the in lieu fees. It will help him speed up the process of getting permits and getting occupied of the building, and I'll let him answer those questions when he comes to testify today. So this is a conditional use permit, which requires a public hearing. All properties within 500 feet were notified. Staff has not received any correspondence from any adjacent or budding property owners. Within your staff report, there are required findings that the Planning Commission would need to make in order to approve the conditional use permit. I would like to say that the City Council will review a resolution of public convenience and necessity based upon an overconcentration of liquor licenses in the census tract, which serves downtown, and this will go before the City Council later in March. So that concludes my report. There was an additional letter that the property owner, the La Quinta Brewing Company owner submitted, and it's before you today. That concludes my report, and Scott is here.
Can I just give people a moment to read the letter that we got, the additional correspondence that we got before we ask questions of staff? Has everybody finished this? Questions of staff, Commissioner Donenfeld?
Glenn, it's my understanding that with respect to the outdoor seating, there is to be no entertainment or speakers or amplified music of any kind. Is that correct?
That's correct. I can point
And I'm looking at planning condition number 4, and I'm wondering if it could be written a little bit more carefully, because the way I read it, one could interpret this to say that it does not authorize any outdoor live entertainment and amplified noise, including speakers. Reading that all together with the "and," it may be that you're talking only there about prohibiting entertainment, which has amplified noise and requires speakers. But I think if you put an "or" between the entertainment and amplified, you might have a better condition, because one might argue that just this really relates to entertainment where noise and speakers are attendant, as opposed to just speakers playing music. And I know we're so concerned about the noise issue.
Note taken.
And the other question I have is, I know from having dealt with the Tommy Bahama case that ABC requires that there be a partition between people sitting outside drinking and the general public areas. And I do see where a wrought iron fence has been provided in the diagram. Are you satisfied that that complies with the ABC requirement?
Right, yes. The applicant will need to do a minor architectural come in with a design of what that would be. And as your experience with these issues, those barriers that ABC requires could be wrought iron fence, they could be planters,
Right.
They could be multiple different things.
So that will come back to planning for approval, I take it.
It would come to a staff level. The commission would not need to see that.
Thank you.
Commissioner Callardine, and then
Question on the parking requirement. We're looking at the project as a whole and calculating the parking requirements. Is that's all of the uses in the two buildings, both the upstairs and downstairs?
That's correct. We have to start with a baseline to do the calculation for the whole building.
Would an alternative way of calculating it be to start with the changes of use from retail to restaurant, and then the added outdoor use? Would that give you a different number or the same number?
When the application first came in, staff calculated the parking required for each unit, and the requirement is actually higher than what is proposed here.
So there is a shortage of there today based on retail use of that existing building, right?
All retail uses are parked at the 24 parking space lot, but the second floor restaurant causes a deficiency in parking, but they've paid an in lieu fee.
Okay, with the in lieu fee paid for the second-story building, is the whole project sufficiently parked today?
Yes.
I don't understand why there's a difference between the delta number and the total number, but maybe we'll get into some discussion with that with the applicant too, because I see he's raised the same question.
Are there other questions? I have one. Commissioner Marizzi, then Commissioner Hudson.
Once the in lieu fee has been paid, future tenants won't have to repay that amount if it's the similar use, the same use?
That's correct.
Commissioner Hudson?
Yeah, I'm just, maybe it's a detail issue, but for a CUP, I think this is important. My question pertains to the outdoor seating area that Commissioner Donenfeld mentioned and the barrier, the ABC required barrier. On the site plan and the floor plan, the gate, the access gate to this area are shown in different locations. Do you know which one is correct, Glenn?
Looking at this slide, it's adjacent to the rounded stairs that go up to the second floor. And it looks like it's in the same location here in the floor plan.
In the packet or the material we got, the site plan shows 2 gates along the curvature area. Anyway, I guess
Right, you're right.
the other question, that's sort of a detail, but the other question I have is again pertaining to the outdoor area. Applicant is showing 16 outdoor seats. It seems like an awfully big cordoned off area for just 16 seats. Even the plans show that. In terms of a mechanism for a CUP, how, to be honest, what's to keep an applicant or any applicant from adding additional tables outside?
That would be a code enforcement issue. And Commissioner Hudson, if I can address the discrepancy, if you look at the plan that's before you on the slide, this was an earlier version before the exhibit that was in your packet that had a different parking calculation. So there must have been a revision, and the applicant may be able to address why the 2 gates are different.
I have a question regarding the seating area too. Do we have any discretion to make sure that comes back to us? I think with other things like Tommy Bahamas, we required some outdoor benches, some seating, something that's an amenity for the downtown area as people walk past. And this wouldn't allow for that. So can that come back to us?
As part of the approval of the parking credit in the downtown, it does mention that the Planning Commission can grant the parking credit if it feels that there is a public amenity that's being offered to the general public or pedestrians.
And let me just clarify, that's for the on-street parking credit, which is different than the in lieu fees. There's specific language there in the zoning code that says at the discretion of the Planning Commission. And so in terms of the on-street spaces and the credit that they receive for the on-street spaces, there is discretion of the Planning Commission.
So it just, okay. And the other question, when I count the number of spaces in the public lot, I think it's 21, am I correct?
Should be 24. It is 21.
It's 21, so
Right.
you have 3, you're crediting some on-street spaces?
I'd have to review that. Don't have an answer for you right now.
When I've gone to the couple of restaurants that are upstairs in different variations, and one of the things that I found was that trucks tended to block the parking as they were coming in. They would be truck parking for the restaurants or for the retail, and then it made it harder to enter and exit that parking lot. Are there any controls on that?
Well, the trucks need to be able to service the restaurants. The other alternative would be to park on the street.
And it's just, as trucks service the restaurant, they tend to block parking spaces, so it's just a question as to how you look at that.
Right, and
Because normally you would see some kind of docking area in a parking
the applicant may be able to
situation.
address how his space will be serviced with deliveries, if they'll be early morning before the shops open.
Okay, well, maybe we can get into that with the applicant. And are there other questions before we open the public hearing? Okay, I'd like to open the public hearing. If the applicant is here, you have 10 minutes to address the commission.
Good afternoon. My name is Scott Stokes. I'm the owner of La Quinta Brewing Company. I think the staff did a good job of, in the staff report, of describing our project, so I don't know if there's a need to go through that. I'd like to note that we will be serving only beer and wine. There's no cocktails. So it's just beer, wine, and cider. We have a current tap room in Old Town La Quinta that would be almost identical to this project, which has been, I think, very successful, embraced by the community, as well as the city government. As I noted on that letter, the letter it's been submitted, I don't dispute that the project is 7 spaces short, is done with their math, but according to the same math, it seems to be 2 spaces short right now. So I was hoping the Planning Commission could consider that, really the intensity has been increased by our project by 5 spaces. And I can answer any questions you have.
Questions of the applicant, starting with Commissioner Maruzzi and going down. Anyone?
Only that when I do the same calculation, I get that they're short 5 spaces based on the delta, the increase, change in use, not the whole project.
My question is, how do you service how are you going to service this area?
We have no food. We're typically just beer and wine, so keg and bottles would be delivered. We probably open about noon, so they would be delivered between maybe 10, 11, probably twice a week.
Okay. And so that's the only servicing that you're anticipating at this point in time? And they'd probably be delivered through the back?
They would be delivered through the back. At our current location, we just have 2 days a week, and it's before we open.
Commissioner Donenfeld.
With respect to service, do you have a wait staff? If I were sitting outside, would I go in, get the beer and bring it out, or would there be a wait person to come out and service me on the patio?
We haven't determined that. I can say at our existing location, which will be very similar to what we're going to do over here, patrons go to the bar, get their beer, and then they take it, just because the place is so small.
So there is a bar. It's not a self-service situation where you can tap
no.
into the beer yourself. There's someone pouring from the taps.
Correct, right.
Because my other question was going to be, how do you control underage drinking? But obviously,
No, there's
you'll
a
be
bar.
well-staffed.
Right.
I got it. Thank you.
Other questions of the applicant? The matter is before the commission. Comments?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
would it be possible for us to approve this with a subsequent resolution of the fine details of the parking, just saying it's approved with respect to the code? I think we've got some questions about the existing parking spaces and the actual calculation, but I don't want to, if we can avoid it, wait for another meeting to fix that.
We have only one item before us. Staff can hopefully confirm, Flynn can confirm what the parking calculation is. I think they can do that.
Make sure it's right.
We had a couple of comments on this, so I'm going to make a motion just to get it started, which is approval with the condition that Commissioner Donenfeld recommended, which is the changing of the word "and" to "or" in terms of outside amplified music or entertainment in the Planning Commission conditions. I would like, if we are counting the public space, the street spaces. I would like it to come back at some point for the public amenity in terms of pedestrian amenity, or refer that to a committee so that we do get a pedestrian amenity. And I would like to also refer this to, I think, by the way, I'm just going to say what I was thinking. I think this is good public policy to have an in lieu provision that allows the reuse of existing spaces. It's excellent public policy. The only concern I have on the policy, and I'm thrilled that you're coming to town. I think it's going to be, it'll enliven the community. The only concern I have is that in terms of policy, I think City Council is out of date in terms of the amount of money that's assessed both for new construction and also reuse. And so if this goes, when this goes to council, I think it would behoove the report that goes to council to suggest that the commission was concerned about the dollar amounts, not the policy, and ask that City Council review it at some point in the future.
Madam Chair, just to clarify, this conditional use permit will not go to City Council. However, in our report on the actions that are taken today at the Planning Commission, we'll include that note that is forwarded to City Council.
But what will go to council is the alcohol issue, and so
public convenience and necessity.
The public convenience and necessity, and when that report goes, I'm assuming that the CUP will also go, or can a note go with them?
We can try and address that as part of the staff report, but again, I'll send in the report of today's actions. I'll include that in the report to the City Council.
And does, I know I jumped the gun on this, but do other people have other comments?
I think it's a good motion.
Okay.
I think you're absolutely right about the good public policy in terms of particularly in terms of the downtown. I think we have been, in general, forgiving in several ways about parking standards downtown, and in an attempt to develop a lively urban space. And a lot of lively urban spaces do have challenges with parking, almost all of them if they're really good. So I'm not worried about this one particularly. I'm sure we're not going to require any construction of any new spaces. The only question in my mind is the appropriate calculation of the in lieu fee.
And I think, and what I'd like staff's, I guess my motion includes whatever staff thinks is the appropriate calculation of the in lieu fee. Do people feel for the pedestrian amenity that could go to a subcommittee? Or would you want it to come back to us at some point in time?
I'd want to make sure that there's space for an adequate amenity. It looks a little tight.
That wouldn't delay the approval of this for him.
It wouldn't delay the approval. I don't think so. I mean, I can leave it up to staff in the condition that they determine what an adequate public amenity would be. And are you comfortable with that, Flynn?
I would prefer to have a subcommittee review that.
I'm going to appoint a subcommittee of Commissioner Donenfeld.
I'll volunteer.
And you want to be there?
Sure.
And Commissioner Callardine, yes.
If I can get the time right.
Yes.
We are waiting for Mr. Malacker. He has the original site plans that we reviewed in terms of calculating the number of spaces that are currently available on site. And so if we can just hold for just a moment while he goes to get that plan.
I don't think council's meeting tonight, are they?
No, they aren't.
Will we?
We don't have to worry about running too late then.
We don't know. It depends on when the subcommittee meets. It depends on when the subcommittee meets. Yes.
Are there any other brew pubs like this in Palm Springs at this point?
Not to my knowledge, no.
So you'll be the first. That's
I
great.
think so.
And do you brew in La Quinta?
We brew, the brewery is just to the northwest of the Washington I-10 interchange there, in an industrial area.
Are you still calculating? Because I have another question. What exactly is an IPA?
That's an India Pale Ale, and it's a very hoppy, high alcohol beer.
Is that a specialty now, the IPA?
It's our best-selling beer, and yeah, it's very hot.
And will you invite us to your opening?
Sure.
I like beer.
Madam Chair and members of the Planning Commission, going through the historical file on this property, there are 24 spaces that were developed with this building when it was originally constructed in 1999, I believe. I believe that there was one space that was lost to the configuration of the handicap parking space when that section of the code changed. But again, per our records, there are 24 spaces on the site, and so we're using that as the basis for the calculation.
Where do you find them? Because they don't exist.
We are looking at the historic plans that were submitted when the project was originally approved.
So just in terms of spaces being lost, you still count them as if they exist even though they've been lost?
The credit would be for the handicap parking space, and that's one. Yeah. And so there should be 23 existing spaces there based on the original plans that were approved. And again, that's the number that we've been working off in our calculations.
But the site plan shows a different number.
Yeah, and again, I apologize for that.
Do you think we might have a Google, just. Can we leave this to you to physically walk the site and count the
Yes,
spaces?
we will be happy to do that.
So that the number, what I would do in my motion is ask that staff physically walk the site,
Okay.
count the spaces, and then determine the number based on what you actually see.
Okay, and that would be appropriate.
Because all we have is an applicant-derived plan, and we don't know if those spaces are actually there.
Okay.
Yes?
There's a secondary issue here once we decide how many spaces. Won't increase in parking demand or any cumulative shortage that the site would have. Raw calculations, and I'm doing even assuming that there's 24 spaces. Oh, I'm sorry. It is on. Just get a sense from the commission. My sense is they should be liable for the change in use, not for any existing shortfall necessarily, unless it's that particular space. I don't know if any other commissioners feel the same way. It's about a 2-space item by my calculations.
The question would be one for the city attorney as to how you make that determination based on the in lieu statute.
If the Planning Commission is comfortable with asking the planning staff to reassess existing on-the-ground parking conditions, I would ask that we also be given the opportunity to review the statute and applicable resolutions at that time to determine the appropriate manner of calculating that requirement.
I'm comfortable with that.
Madam Chair, I would ask, though, that when you have finished all these calculations and granted the final CUP, that you report back to the Planning Commission with respect to what your final count was and what your methodology was, so that we're informed as to how the number was finally arrived
Good idea.
at.
I think we do want to move this forward, but I agree that we would like it reported back.
Call a question.
Can you, I think we have a motion and a second. Can we call the roll, please? The motion passes 5-0 with one absence. Congratulations. We're really looking forward to having you in town.
Okay.
Really long agenda.
We had one that was only 20 minutes and I was here.
I don't remember it. We have
Madam Chair, your microphone is not on.
We're at Planning Commission reports, requests, and comments. Can I just get a report from the subcommittee that's meeting with Infusion Beach as to,
Well, I had a question in terms of the scheduling. Terry, has a specific time been set? Is it still next Thursday?
Yes, we're looking at next Thursday, the 22nd.
And is the time set, though? I saw the email from the applicant, but
It will be in the afternoon sometime, so I need to touch base with everybody
okay,
else.
but it's Thursday. Right.
and Commissioner Maruzzi, report from the airport, or the golf course ordinance subcommittee?
I think you have a better memory than I do.
Two of us met with staff. We worked through a lot of issues. We're actually hoping that we will have a draft ordinance to look at our next meeting and something then to review with Flynn and with the commission.
Wow.
We had a lot of really good material that David Newell pulled together, especially ordinances from Collier County, which I think Flynn had provided. And they were excellent, and we thought we had enough to work with. So the subcommittee's been moving very fast. And our next meeting is
End of the month?
on the 28th at 10 o'clock, am I correct?
Yes, I believe that's what Mr. Newell has scheduled.
So if you would mark your calendars. What time is it? I don't remember if he said.
And make
He's,
sure you
he
get the
changed-
right time in your calendar.
Change the date.
9 to 11.
Oh, 9 to 11, okay.
Is that the date that came out in the invite from David?
It came out yesterday. So we do have another meeting, and hopefully we'll have something, maybe not informed to report back, but something to go with later on. The reports from Flynn, we had two other subcommittees. I don't know if they've met. One is with HSPB on demolitions, and has that been scheduled yet?
No, that one has not been scheduled yet. However, it does appear that the Historic Site Preservation Board will be ready to move forward on that here within the next month or so. And so the members of the subcommittee will be contacted once we have a tentative meeting date for that
Who's on
item.
that subcommittee?
The subcommittee is Commissioner Donenfeld, Commissioner Maruzzi, and is there a third? I don't remember.
I can't remember. I have it in my notes, though.
It's not any of the rest of us, so it's either Commissioner Hirschbein or it's the two members that we've identified.
And I believe it's just the two members.
And the PDD subcommittee, we have a date for that, right?
Yes, for the PDD subcommittee, I would like to meet on February the 22nd from 1 to 2:30. That would be Chair Wehrmuck, Vice Chair Callardine, and Mr. Hirschbein. And I have not sent out meeting notices for that yet, but I will do that.
What day of the week is that?
That, let's see, the 22nd is, I believe, a Thursday.
For people may or may not know that members of the public organizations have asked to join us on some of these subcommittees. So they may be, I think they are at this point open to the public.
Yes, subcommittee meetings are open to the public. Members of the public are invited to attend and offer public comment at those subcommittee meetings.
And I have one more that Flynn will probably make announcements on as well. I was called and sent an email by City Councilor Lisa Middleton saying that the City Council at its last meeting had assigned city councilors to various boards and commissions as liaison. Commissioner Middleton is our official liaison, and Flynn and I have been discussing how that would work, but you were going to talk through with our attorney just to make sure that we presented it correctly. So it's yours.
Again, as Chair Wermuck has indicated, the City Council has appointed liaisons to certain boards and commissions. I think one of the benefits of that is an issue that we discussed today in terms of the fees for in lieu parking. While they are established by City Council, it is our belief, not only that of the chair, but also my belief that they are a little low based on current construction costs. And so having a City Council member present, a liaison present, to hear that type of discussion of the Planning Commission, I think would be beneficial, so they know that there are issues outside of some of the things that appear on their agendas that are worthy of consideration and action by the City Council. They have also appointed a liaison to the Historic Site Preservation Board, which again, I think will be beneficial in terms of many of the questions that we have relative to the maintenance of city historic properties. So again, I think this is a beneficial move to give additional communication between our boards and commissions and the City Council.
And what we had envisioned, if our attorney allows it, would be utilizing a format that's fairly close to what we use for AAC, which is the liaison joining staff when they're present, sitting with staff as opposed to sitting in the public, if that's acceptable, and then having an item on our agenda after Planning Commission reports and before the director's reports of City Council liaison questions for them and comments, so that we would have an agenda, which was Commissioner Donenfeld's suggestion, and I thought it was great, as to have a place where they can either tell us what they've done or thought about what we've suggested, or they can answer some of our questions, and they can tell us what's important to them right now. So I'm assuming that that works and that we may see Commissioner Middleton in the future. She said for meetings that she can't attend, she would like me to report back on issues that are exceedingly, felt
For a while, Rick
important.
He almost never attended.
And I think she has a fairly good understanding of how we work. What they do not want to do is to impact our deliberations and focus our deliberations, I guess. Questions on this?
Lynn, I'm reading my tea leaves, and I believe that we're going to lose our attorney one of these days as the city reorganizes its in-house attorney capabilities. I can only say that Michael's presence has been inordinately helpful to all of us, I think, having someone here to sort of not only be a lawyer but be a referee at times. And I'm wondering, what is Mr. Kopkick's thoughts about staffing planning with some sort of legal expertise when Michael is no longer with us? I know he's looking to have a deputy attorney in-house be appointed. Is his thought, do you know, that perhaps this person might serve as the attorney for a particular important commission like ours?
I don't know at this point in time if the deputy would then be appointed to sit at the Planning Commission meetings, but that's certainly something that we have discussed, and it's something that I would like to see continue.
So you'll carry forward our message?
Oh, yes, absolutely, absolutely. We have appreciated Mr. Doubt very much and having him here at our meetings and the support that he has provided both to the commission and to staff. So,
is that something you can pass on to council as well with this meeting? And also our thanks to you for...
Although he's not going anywhere quite yet.
Oh, good.
When he does, we have to have a good party.
Yes.
Another party.
Are there any more comments, questions for Flynn, other items? This is I'm adjourning the meeting, or do I need a motion to adjourn, or can I just, we've just adjourned in a little under an hour. Congratulations.
And we are adjourned to February the 28th.